Have you ever been so frustrated with a game that you wanted to throw your controller only to immediately hit retry and jump right back in? Yeah, we've all been there. It's kind of weird when you think about it. We spend hours, even days, seeking out an experience that in any other part of our life we would try to avoid at all costs. Failure. And that fascinating contradiction is what we're going to unpack today.
So let's just get right to it. Here's the big question. Most of our lives, our whole society, is built around success, right? We're programmed to avoid mistakes, to win, to get things right the first time. So why on earth do we power up a console and actively search for a challenge that we know is going to make us fail, probably over and over and over again?
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to define what the paradox of failure actually is. Then, believe it or not, we're going to look for answers in ancient philosophy and art. From there, we'll explore 3 classic solutions to this kind of puzzle before landing on a really cool idea about holding 2 contradictory desires at once. And finally, we'll see what makes failing in a video game such a special and even essential experience.
Right then, let's dive into our first section, the paradox of failure. And that subtitle on the screen, man, that just says it all, doesn't it? Why do I want to experience something that I also do not want to experience? That is the perfect description of that feeling, being so frustrated by a loss, but just not being able to put the controller down.
So let's break this paradox down into 3 simple, clear statements. Number 1, in life, we avoid failure. It stinks. It's embarrassing. We don't like it. Number 2, when we play games, we fail. A lot. It's just part of the deal. And number 3, we actively choose to play these games, knowing full well we're going to run headfirst into the very thing we normally can't stand. You see the problem? When you put those 3 things together, they just don't logically add up.
And this isn't just some vague feeling we all have. It's actually been tested. A study by GameLab had people play a game and then rate how much they enjoyed it. And the results are fascinating. Look at this. The players who beat the game without ever failing gave it a pretty mediocre rating, right? But the players who failed at least once and then won, they rated it way higher. So failure, somehow, made the experience better. The paradox is very, very real.
To really understand what's going on here, we actually need to zoom out a bit. Because this isn't just a video game thing. Philosophers have been chewing on an almost identical problem for literally thousands of years, but in a different context. The context of art, and specifically, tragedy.
They call it the paradox of painful art. And just listen to how similar this sounds. 1. People don't go looking for painful emotions in their daily lives. 2. People feel genuinely painful emotions, sadness, fear, pity, when they experience certain kinds of art. And 3, people will actually line up and pay money for that art knowing it's going to make them feel bad. It's the exact same puzzle, just with a sad movie instead of a difficult video game.
But hold on, there is a huge difference here, and it's what makes games so interesting. With art, you're a spectator. You feel sad for Romeo and Juliet, but it's their tragedy, not yours. With game failure, though, it's all about you. It's your skill being tested. It's your performance on the line. You have a direct hand in what happens, which means the sting of failure is so much more personal. So how have some of the greatest minds in history tried to solve this puzzle? Let's take a quick run through of 3 classic philosophical arguments and see how they might help us understand our love of losing.
Okay, the first idea is called deflation, and it basically tries to solve the problem by saying there is no problem. The pain isn't real. Some thinkers argue we're just pretending to feel sad for a character. Others say that because we're in control, we can pause the game or just walk out of the theater, we're shielded from any genuine hurt. Or, as the philosopher David Hume suggested, the sheer beauty and craft of the art itself can transform a negative emotion into a pleasurable one.
All right, the second approach is compensation. This one admits, yep, the pain is totally real, but it argues it's a price worth paying for an even bigger reward. You've probably heard of Aristotle's idea of catharsis, that watching a tragedy helps purge our own negative emotions. That's a classic compensation argument. Or think about a horror movie. The fear you feel is just the cost of admission for the cognitive pleasure you get from figuring out the puzzle of how to beat the monster.
Now, for the third solution, which is easily the most radical. It's called ahedonism, and it challenges the very foundation of the whole debate. It says, maybe we're just wrong about what motivates people. What if we aren't just simple creatures who run towards pleasure and away from pain? Maybe, just maybe, sometimes what we're really looking for is something else entirely, something like satisfaction or meaning. And those things can absolutely exist alongside pain and struggle. So, where does that leave us?
Well,
Each of those ideas has a little piece of the truth, right? But a much fuller picture starts to form when we stop trying to solve the contradiction and instead just accept it. Maybe we're just built to want two opposite things at the exact same time.
The philosopher Gregory Curry came up with a perfect example using Shakespeare's Othello. When you're watching the play, you are desperately hoping Desdemona survives. You're rooting for her. But imagine if you went to see it and the director changed the ending so she lived happily ever after. You'd be furious. You'd feel cheated. So how can that be? How can you want her to live and also want her to die?
It's because we're holding two different desires on two different levels. Our immediate, in the heat of the moment, is for the hero to win. But our bigger picture aesthetic desire is for the story as a whole to be powerful and meaningful. And in a great tragedy, that requires suffering. We want both things to be true.
Now let's just plug that framework directly into video games. It fits like a glove. Your immediate desire when you're on your 10th attempt at a boss fight is to just win already and be done with it. But your aesthetic desire is for the entire game to be a challenging, engaging, and satisfying journey. And you can't have that without the very real possibility of failure.
And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. What makes games the perfect arena for this dynamic to play out? It's not just that they allow failure. It's that they give us a whole psychological toolkit to deal with it. They give us the freedom to fail.
Games provide us with this wonderful thing we can call plausible deniability. It's a whole menu of face-saving excuses. We can blame the lag, we can blame a cheap enemy, we can say, oh, I wasn't even really trying. And of course, there's the ultimate trump card. It's just a game. This little bit of ambiguity lets us invest ourselves 100% in winning, while always having a psychological escape hatch ready if we lose. Think of it this way. If you're learning a real-world skill, like driving a car, you're happy if it's easy. But if you buy a video game and it's so easy that you beat it in 10 minutes, you feel ripped off. In games, a lack of failure isn't a feature, it's a bug. And this is the key. Failure isn't an obstacle we have to overcome to get to the fun part. The struggle against failure is the fun part.
And really, this idea is so much bigger than just the games we play. The Olympic Creed says it perfectly. We are drawn to the struggle. We seek out challenges, not because we're guaranteed to win, but because there is value in the fight itself. And maybe games are just the perfect, safe little arenas where we get to practice that beautiful idea, one game over screen at a time.